And do you mind if I edit and distribute this recording if you desire?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, Leno. Well, we're always honored to meet you, to talk to you, to gather your the precious oral history that you share regarding some of your humanitarian work. This interview is part of our Sembradores de Aztlán oral history project that we started in the 1980s.
Wow.
And I understand that you recently wrote a theatrical piece for Jose Antonio. Am I getting the name right?
Yeah, Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez.
Okay. Okay. Give us give us a description of this gentleman.
Well, he was a 16-year-old kid that was walking along in Nogales on the border, and he was shot 10 times in the back of in his back and head by a guard, border guard called Lonnie Swartz, and Jose Antonio died. And Lonnie Swartz said that he was in danger. If you look at because every month we have a demonstration on the 10th of each month, because he was killed on October 10th, 2012. And the border wall from the street is about 40 feet high. So for him to be able to throw a rock that would endanger a border guard, he'd have to be able to have control over the rock as you would a drone, for the rock to go all the way over the border wall and then come down and hit Lonnie Swartz. It just doesn't happen that way.
Now, are the demonstrations on the 10th of each month in Nogales?
In Nogales,
Okay.
and we do them in, well, there's Nogales, USA, Nogales, Mexico. So normally we do them in Nogales, Mexico, right at the spot where he was killed.
Okay. So I understand that Nogales, Arizona, is one of the places where more immigrants that are trying to cross die. Is that correct?
Well, it's one of the areas, but there are some in Texas and California that have more deaths because in actuality there's no control over the data. We do have a lot of groups that work in Arizona, like we do in California and Texas, putting out water and food for people who are trying to make the journey. I don't know what you plan with this interview, but I could do you a reading of the piece that I did on Jose Antonio. So when I moved to Magdalena de Quino, Sonora, Mexico, which is about 2.5 hours south of Tucson. And when I got here, I was reconnected with Ana Maria Vasquez, who's a Colombian who had formed an organization of victims' rights of border killings. And so she asked me to write a piece. And I have a draft of a piece that includes about 10 other people that have been killed by border guards.
Sure.
But the one that's semi-complete is the one on Jose Antonio, which I could do for you if you so wanted.
Let's do it. Seguro.
Okay. And this and at all our demonstrations, his mother comes, Araceli, and Doña Taide, his grandmother, are normally there. So I was very, when you write a piece, a lot of us don't get a chance to perform it or do it in front of the family or with the family. So in a lot of public spaces, including in Tucson and other towns in Arizona, the family has stood by my side while I recite this. And I do it in Jose Antonio's voice. And when we have a large crowd, I do the sentence, then they do a sentence following me. So this I'm going to do Jose Antonio. I am Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez. I was shot and killed on October 10th, 2012, by a border guard by the name of Lonnie Swartz. He said that I endangered his visit. He shot me 10 times in my back and my head, and he killed my body, but he did not kill my spirit. My spirit is here with you today. It's here with my mother, Araceli, with my grandmother, Doña Taide, and all the people who fight for human rights. You know, there I was walking home when the first shot rang out, and it hit me in the small of the back, and I didn't know what it was, but it hurt. It was like somebody hitting me with a hammer in the small of my back. Then there was a second shot. Then there was a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth. And by that time, my body is face down in the streets of Nogales, and blood is pouring out of my body. And he continued shooting. The seventh shot came, the eighth, the ninth, the 10th. What kind of an animal does this? What kind of a human being could shoot an innocent 16-year-old child like me in the back without any cause? How can that happen? So it has broken the hearts of my family, my friends, and people ask us, what do you want? What do you want? We don't want revenge. We don't want to drink of that sour and bitter medicine. What we want is justice, justicia, no nomás para nosotros, pero para todos los víctimas de los guardias fronterizas. So we want justice from the U.S., from Homeland Security, from the border guards. That's all we want for. Justice for me and all the others who have been killed by border guards. That's all we want. Stay with us. Justicia, justice for everyone, para todos. So that is basically the piece that I do in Spanish or in English. But you know, it's an
Delicious.
honor, Jose Antonio, who I never had a chance of meeting, but it's very difficult for, they say the parents should never outlive their children. But knowing how much violence there is on the border and violence against immigrants and poor people, even in this country, the USA, it hurts a family to lose somebody to violence and never have a full day in court. But we keep saying, and we keep going every month on the 10th of each month to demonstrate in Nogales. Nogales, from where I live right now, is about 50 miles. So I go down there and do my reading and talk to people, lift their spirits. And it's a hard work. It's hard work. Anybody who does human rights work, it's not easy. But that's what the difference that we found out in the 60s and 70s. That if we speak up, we have a better chance of getting justice, not maybe for us, but for others. And that's why I did this piece, and I'm trying to find a 16-year-old young man who can do the reading, because it really should be coming out of a young man's voice. And then we're going to film it to distribute it to other people. Because the message that we have to share with people, that human rights are not given to you easily. You have to fight for them. And when we were on strike, I used to be an organizer with United Farm Workers. And we had some dark days when everything was falling apart. We had no money. Our political enemies had all the power and were abusing us. And Cesar and Dolores Huerta would remind us that we got to keep working. We got to keep telling the truth, and that in the end we will win, because the truth lives longer than hate, and love lives longer than hate. And we don't do it out of vengeance; we do it out of love. We forgive those who abuse us, but we don't forgive the acts, because we know we can change people's hearts and minds, and we got to do it out of compassion. In 1970, I embraced nonviolence. It was the best thing I ever did, because it showed me that I could control my own life, and it showed me the power of love. Mira, el amor y el corazón es que tenemos. Y así cualquier religión en que tú participas o otras personas, it's built around love, not around hate. And we know that we're going to win, whether they like it or not, because we continue to educate people. And so those of us who were around in the 60s and 70s, yeah, we did a good job. But now we got to join forces with the young people and have them lead us into the promised land, because they're more creative than we are. They have more energy. They know how to manage this internet world better than we do. So we have to make room for them and for women for us to succeed. And I'm just excited that I was asked to write this piece about Jose Antonio, and that his mother and grandmother feel that I honor properly their son and grandchild. So it's going to be part of this community. Mira, hay una frase in Guantanamera, and there's a phrase in the singing of Guantanamera that says, uh, con los pobres quiero echar mi suerte. Con los pobres de esta tierra quiero echar mi suerte. I want to cast my fate with the poor. You know, I have friends that are movie stars, friends that are millionaires, friends that are big politicians. But when you come to the bottom of it, we're all the same. But where I've learned the most lessons, last night I was with uh, a Latino Mexican who plays the banjo. I said, that's not a Mexican instrument, but he got enthralled by it. But he's a banjo player in Magdalena. And we both agreed that we are every day, those of us who participate in the human rights struggle are on a PhD program. We're learning every day. And the teachers may be women, they may be men, they may be gays, they may be poor, they may be rich. All we have to do is take the time to listen. Pero yo con los pobres me siento mejor. I feel more at home with the poor. I grew up poor. I live in a poor neighborhood here in Mexico, and I love my neighbors. I love my neighbors, and nobody has a lot of money that lives around me. So it's great, and that's what we have to do. Is our strength is not in how strong we are, but the network that we can work with. So if you look at a fishing net, those people that throw out nets for fishing, it's an interweaving, weaving of ropes and threads, and that's what we do. We throw out our nets every day, and we catch some interesting fish, ideas, and theories. And so I'm happy to be alive. This is a difficult time. And so it's going to ask the best of us. I just want to talk about the best of us. Sometimes we think that we got to be the winners, whether it's in a race and it's good, or a sports team. But our participation in life is not that we were the best, but that we gave the best that we have to offer. Siempre es que das lo mejor de lo que tú eres. And that's what we got to do, is say, I'm going to give you everything that I am. And I don't care whether I'm in first, second, or third place, but you're going to know that I'm giving you straight out of my heart, straight out of my mind, the best that I can give. And that's all we want from people. And if we do that, we're going to do well. The other thing I want to say is that a lot of times we forget about the people who have different disabilities that might be tied to a wheelchair or a bed, but they still have a great mind and a great heart. And we have to recruit those people, because I've worked with a lot of wheelchair people and people who are tied to their beds in different situations. And they're thinking every day, spending hours, and they read everything, listen to everything, and they have a lot to offer us. And that's a powerful group. They could do a lot. Porque un muchacho me dijo, I have 8 hours every day. Nobody calls on me, asks me to do anything, and I want to be put to work, and that's great. So we have a lot of opportunity. We just got to be smart to use everybody.
A question, Leno.
Okay.
Is your is the work that you just cited, I mean, the work that you just read out, will is it or will it eventually become a performance piece?
Well, it's we're trying to get somebody to record it, so that's what we're doing. And then the full play, if I can find somebody to work with me, we could have it done in a month. But I'm really super busy. But we are going to record it and put it out, because it's just another way of getting things out. Look, you know, as I know, coming out of the '60s and '70s, that the arts are what changed people's minds and hearts. All major movements have had good music, good murals, good artists, good dancers, good singers. And we have to encourage our people to use the arts to be their voice. I started out as a poet at age 11, and each year I found out different ways to read. You know, I wrote in Colorado with 3 Texans. We did one of the first books of poetry in the Chicano movement, called Los Cuatro. And Los Cuatro included Abelardo Delgado, Lalo from El Paso, um,
Ricardo?
Ricardo Sanchez from El Paso, and Tigre Perez from the fudge is the name of that town, Nuevo Laredo, and and uh, and then me, the only Colorado Chicano, because we felt that people needed to know what we were thinking and how strong we felt about it. And that was also recording what was going on in our movement. And and so it became very interesting. So I had 2 stories that I have about my poetry. I wrote a poem called Chicana in 1968 while I was at the University of Colorado. And I went back to the University of Colorado about 20 years later. And outside the Chicano Studies program, there was a poster, uh, a 3 by 3 or 5 by 3 poster, big poster with my poem. And it was signed Juan Valdez. Well, Juan Valdez was a name I used since I was 11 years old, because if you were an intellectual in the barrio, you were either considered gay or a danger to the Chicano machismo, so you'd get beaten up. So I went under the name Juan Valdez when I was only 11, 12 years old. So I go up to this Chicano and I said, what do you think of that poem? He goes, oh man, that's a really great poem. It talks about our raza, la mujer chicana. And I said, I wrote that. He goes, no, you didn't. Juan Valdez did. I said, I'm also Juan Valdez, he says. And this young Chicano said, no, you're not. I met the real Juan Valdez, and you're not him. And then I said, oh, I was just joking. I didn't write it. But I have the original copy in my box here. The other one is that I'm probably the only Chicano. There's a lot of Chicanos, Latinos, uh, who have written poems from the U.S. About political situations that have gone on in Central and Latin America, Africa, Asia. But as far as I know, I am the only Chicano poet who had his poems used in a revolution. So during the Sandinista fight against Somoza, a 40-year dictatorship in Nicaragua, I was there as a Peace Corps director, and I wrote a poem, Loteria, Loteria, and I was asked to perform it at a gathering that we did that included a lot of Sandinistas, because then we had a toque de queda, a curfew. But once the sun went down, you couldn't go home till the morning or you'd be killed. So I spent that whole night writing my first poem about Nicaragua. About a month later, some of the compañeras Sandinistas, they came and said, "Can we have a copy of your poem?" And I go, "Yeah." And so I gave them a copy, asked them not to put my name on it because it would get me killed immediately. Then about a week later, we're in El Mercado del Este, which was the poor people's mercado in those days. And my housekeeper, Magdaleno Swartz, who just passed away, she said, "Don't look now, but everybody is reading your poem." And there in different colored papers, we were still into mimeograph in those days. People were reading my poem and smiling.
What year was
So,
that?
oh, fudge. That was fudge, 79, about February, March 79. And Somoza was overthrown about July of 79. But I didn't plan on writing that poem. It just came out, and I was a little embarrassed to read my poem in front of Sandinistas and Nicaraguenses, because Nicaragua has some most amazing poets. Y por eso me daba un poco de vergüenza. I said, how can I even compete? But the compas liked the poem. And so that's one of the hallmarks. Once I saw the poem out there on the streets, I was very proud. I wanted to shout to all the shopkeepers, "Hey, I wrote that." But I knew if I did that, I'd be dead by sundown.
Leno,
Because
do you have a copy of that poem where it was published in Nicaragua by any chance?
it was never published in Nicaragua. It was mimeographed in Nicaragua. I have it in my book,
And
uh,
which book is that?
Los Cuatro.
Okay.
Not Los Cuatro, Looking for My Wings. I could send you the poem.
Looking for what?
My Wings.
Looking for my wings. That's the name of the book.
Buscando mis alas. See, because I always wondered why a bird could fly, because the bird starts flying once they learn how to use their wings. And I said, that's all I got to do is I have to find my wings para volar. Because once you start learn how to fly, porque nuestra visión es muy local. Cuando sabes, when you know you have wings and you can fly, you can see more of the world and in a different perspective. And that's what if I said I have to have wings, then nobody would ask me, should I fly?
A quick, a few questions, Leno. I mentioned that I would make a donation next week. Do you use Zelle? Zelle?
Yeah, I use Zal.
Okay, I'll send it out next Wednesday. Another question. Raul Salinas, the poet from San Antonio, he started a Chicano newspaper when he was in Leavenworth, Kansas, in '69, and it was titled Aslan of Leavenworth. By any chance, do you have copies of that?
No, I don't. But Raul also had a little bit of fame in Seattle, Washington, where I worked. I think I met Raul once, but not a lot of times. And but the guy I kept running into was Neftali over the years, and he goes against all odds and is still alive and writing and being an influence.
We bought a mural that Neftali painted in 1991 at a restaurant in San Antonio, and last weekend we moved the last parts of it to my house, where I just built a storage unit. Uh,
Oh,
the the poem is titled Molcajete Cósmico, and it's 40 feet by 20 feet high. And of course, it's in different pieces of sheetrock, but it's interesting that you mentioned Neftali, because we have his only mural that was able to be removed from a wall.
no, that's great. Neftali and I were both at Ricardo Sanchez's funeral,
Mm.
and I went to visit Ricardo Sanchez about 2 or 3 weeks before he died. So, and I hadn't seen Ricardo for about 2 years, 3 years. And he's in his house. He's on a life support system, and they have the lights turned down because everybody's waiting for him to die. So I go in there and I told his wife, Tere, I said, I'm here to read poems for Ricardo. So I go in there and, we do our Chicano handshake and catch up a little bit. And I said, Ricardo, do you mind if I read you some of my new poetry? And Ricardo was really a great poet. And he said, yeah, go ahead. So I read him about 6 poems, and I go, so what do you think? He goes, I guess they're okay. He said, me fueron las cabras, and I started yelling at him, what do you mean that is okay? It's better than any of the crap you or Tigre or Lalo wrote. And I'm yelling at him, and his family comes running in, and Ricardo's crying by this time because he knew that he got to me uh, by, taking me on. And he says, that's what I wanted to do, is wake you up, Magdaleno. And but the family didn't know that, you shouldn't yell at a guy dying, but
Mm.
it was
Mm.
pretty funny. And then when we went to his funeral, his wife stayed in them traditional Mexicans, and they had the black veils y todo, y van a enterrar a este Ricardo. And the priest is doing, the Catholic magic that they do with a crucifix and holy water. And he's talking about Ricardo without ever knowing him.
Mm.
And so finally I couldn't take it any longer. And I said, Father, I know your intentions are good, but I got to tell you, Ricardo did not like the Catholic Church. He did not like priests.
Mm.
And if he were alive, he would get up and tell you to go home right now.
Mm.
He doesn't believe in this stuff. And I could see his wife dead and laughing under the black veil. Many of the other traditional family members were a little bit shocked that I would yell at a priest.
Mm.
Part of the way to do that, say, hey man, this guy, you can bury him this way, but he don't believe in it.
Mm.
And so maybe it's fun.
Otra
So,
pregunta, Magdaleno.
uh,
Go ahead and finish your thought.
no, but anyway, that's those 70.
Okay. How far are you from Tres Piedras, New Mexico, approximately?
Tres Piedras,
Close to Taos, no?
Charles, some probably hours, let's say, Valley Fudge. Mm,
Well, anyway, the reason I asked because I'm working with Juan Salazar from Tres Piedras, New Mexico, and he's also connected to a documentary filmmaker that might help us do a documentary on uh, Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay. So I will connect you if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I drive up there. It's about 8 hours for you.
8 hours.
Doing a big trip, starting 4th. I'm going on 25 days on a road trip up north.
Órale.
Highway 5, doing stuff. The thing is that we have to take resources to talk about because best people are best poets I found out were that were on the street and never had any of their stuff great. There were great people in our communities.
Bueno, con permiso, Leno. So do you want me to connect you to that filmmaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. A last question. Are there any documentaries that you can recommend that we show at our film festival this fall? The film festival is Cine Cuauhtémoc.
um, Let me think. On a couple, there's one on the death penalty. The
Okay. You can text those to me by email when you get a chance.
yeah, no problem. But I'm going to send you Loteria.
Órale. Uh, you want to send it by email or you want me to send you my address?
No, I'm going to send it to you by email.
Órale. Bueno, Leno,
Okay.
gracias. Gracias por tus esfuerzos. And I may put this interview on YouTube if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine. Whatever you want to do with it.
Bueno, con permiso y un abrazo cordial.
Bueno, gracias, hermano. Chao.
Chao.